Guys, before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember, guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we highlight all the players you need to know about on game day. And the fourth and final segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. So first news story is little nuggets on Ted Larson and running back Jay Ajayi. This report comes from Pro Football Rumors. Just a day after activating offensive lineman Ted Larson, the Dolphins have decided to make him inactive for their Sunday night affair versus the Raiders. Larson, 30, was forced onto the injured reserve for the first 2 months of the season after suffering a torn bicep in the offseason. It remains to be seen how long it's going to take until Larson returns to the starting lineup, but he's expected to replace left guard Jesse Davis at some point over the next few games. Just as a key starter is returning in Larson, Miami said goodbye to lead running back Jay Ajayi when they dealt him to the Eagles for a fourth-round pick on the day of the trade deadline. The move came as a surprise to many Dolphins fans, given the importance of the 24-year-old to the team's offense. Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald said that the deal was just another series of questionable decisions that the franchise has made over the last few years. Salguero points out the team's moves to get rid of Vontae Davis, Brandon Marshall, Mike Wallace, and Carlos Dansby at some points in time where the team gave up too early on talent. The trade does open up more playing time for the likes of Kenyon Drake and Damian Williams, but the Dolphins' offense will certainly look a lot different without Ajayi in the backfield. Alright, so that was some interesting stuff there. Do I think it was the same thing as giving up a Vontae Davis, a Brandon Marshall, a Mike Wallace, a Carlos Dansby, a Wes Welker? Players of this caliber? No. When you look at some of these lists of some of these players, Brandon Marshall, he was a head case. He's infamous in his younger years to be a locker room issue. Mike Wallace never produced. He was also a locker room issue. Not saying that Joe Philbin had a good culture to begin with, but the man benched himself in the middle of a game. Not only that, but he just did not produce as a Dolphin. And ever since he was a Dolphin, he goes to Minnesota, really doesn't produce. He found, he had a little bit of a, resurgence in Baltimore, and then obviously this year he's kind of disappeared as well. Carlos Dansby was a head scratcher. He wasn't at the latter stages of his career, but he was close to it. But he had some good years after he left Miami. Vontae Davis, out of all of these, is the biggest head scratcher because Vontae was in the middle of his prime. He had some really good years with the Colts. Right after the trade. He's kind of on the decline now due to age. He's no longer a number one corner, but he's still a pretty good corner. So I would say that one was the biggest mistake out of this list. And I really don't think the Jay Ajayi situation, regardless of what happens to Jay and what he does in his career, he just didn't fit the scheme. He didn't fit what we wanted to do on offense. Again, it's hard to hear. He was a fan favorite. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL. He was one of my favorite players on the team, for sure. He was a great player. But he didn't fit the scheme. He didn't fit what we were trying to do in the 2017 season. And I really think you saw results due to the fact that he was gone when we played the Raiders. It's just a more natural fit to have Kenyon and Damian because they're more natural pass catchers. Again, people bring up the fact, well, then why did he catch a ton of passes at Boise State? I've brought this up a million times when talking about Jay Ajayi because it's frustrated me his entire career here. He was never a natural receiver, and that was an issue in this offense because you have to have a running back at that position who can run routes and really create mismatches on the defense. Now that Adam doesn't have to take out Jay and then put in Damian, and then the defense can kind of get a tip off of what we're trying to do, it allows a little less predictability. Our offense is going to flow better, and the playbook is now fully open. And we're going to be way less predictable now that we have that ability coming out of the backfield. So I think it had to happen. It needed to happen. This whole thing that, he cried about not getting enough carries. I think it had more to do with the fact that he just didn't fit the scheme. And Adam Gase, again, he said it in his press conferences. He made a lot of compromises for certain people in this offense to fit in. And Jay Ajayi was one of them. And I think out of everybody on the offense, he stuck out like a sore thumb because he did make a ton of compromises to really utilize Jay's talents, and it brought us to the playoffs last year because he completely changed the offense mid-season and really found an identity. And that's why teams had a lot of trouble defending us. In this season, obviously Todd Bowles mainly really put out the blueprint on how to stop our offense, and it's worked for everybody, basically, that we've played. It doesn't matter if you have a good defense or a bad defense. The offense does struggle. So now that we're reverting back to the playbook, now that the playbook is more wide open, I think it helps this team. Rather than comparing this to a Carlos Dansby and Mike Wallace, Brandon Marshall, Vontae Davis. Again, the one that was the most out of the blue and the dumbest decision, in my opinion, was the Vontae Davis move. The Brandon Marshall move, that had some actual reasons behind it. The Mike Wallace move, actual reasons behind it. The Carlos Dansby move was interesting, but I think you could make an argument why they moved on there. So it is what it is, but this is a totally different thing. I think this was not a great move because of what we got for him. I think we could have got better compensation for him, but I think it had to happen. I really do think it had to happen. Now, I could be totally wrong. I could be totally wrong about this. This is just my opinion. We could stink for the rest of the year, but I really think this is going to help the offense. And it's not like I hate Jay. Like I said, I love Jay. And I'm not saying he was a terrible player because he was a great player. But schematically, he really didn't fit Adam Gase's offense. When you look at all the running backs that had a ton of success, Jeremy Langford was thought to be this future star in the NFL when Adam Gase was there. He has completely fallen off the planet because Adam really can make average players look really good. He's really good at that. And Jeremy, one of his strengths was a receiving back. That was one of his best attributes. I don't know. I can't talk today. But again, I think this had to happen for the offense to have success down the stretch and really to make a playoff push. Am I happy about the compensation? Absolutely not. We could have definitely done better there. I think some of that was due to the fact that Mike Tannenbaum, in the Eagles GM, whose name is escaping me right now, they have a really good relationship. Obviously, they've made a lot of trades in the past, multiple, like a ton. It's insane. They're really good friends. So I think that had something to do with it, which is just gross. It makes me want to throw up on the floor because I don't care if you good buddies or not. That's a little ridiculous. So I'm not happy about the compensation, but when you look at the reasons behind it, it makes a lot of sense. And hopefully Adam's right. If he's wrong, he's wrong. But I think Adam's right. And it's not like he went out there on Sunday night and didn't change anything. I mean, obviously the offense was different. You guys saw it. I saw it. It was way more productive. It flowed better. The chemistry was better. We were getting matchups that we liked. And it was really helping our offense be less predictable. And we were just better. We were just better. And his offense works better with receiving backs at the helm. And I think we'll see that for the rest of the year. And I hope we see that. And I hopefully see progression. And, one of the things I noticed before we move on to the next news story is Adam Gase, even after a win, I've never seen him so happy in terms of what he saw on the offensive side of the football since he's been here, for God's sakes. So I think he's confident and optimistic, which should reassure all of you guys and make you a little bit more optimistic about what's to come because of that. I have never seen the man so happy especially after a loss. All right, and obviously Ted Larson's coming back. An interesting stat here before we move on. He ranked, I think, 37th. Okay, yeah, here we go. He ranked 37th in his performance among Pro Football Focus's 75 qualified guards. So that's not tremendous, that's not great, but that's middle of the road, right? That's serviceable, and that's what we need at the guard position. We need a vet like him to come in and really just be serviceable at that guard position. We cannot continue to have mental mistakes at the guard position. And then obviously Jesse's a young player. Ted's going to come in and hopefully solidify the offensive line, help solidify it, bring a veteran presence to it, and we're going to have less penalties on the offensive line. You can't have... I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm getting so upset even thinking about it. But Jesse Davis, as a guard, you're at home, okay? You're at Hard Rock Stadium. You shouldn't be called for, I think, 2 false start penalties? Are you kidding me? So again, hopefully that stuff gets cleaned up, for sure. All right, so let's move on. All right, let's move on to the Dolphins have signed a tackle from the Browns practice squad, Zach Stirrup. I think he's 6'9", played at Wisconsin. Don't know a ton about him. Don't know a lot about him. I couldn't give you guys, a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But, I hope this doesn't mean, and I hope this isn't like, we need depth at the tackle position due to the fact that Juwan James is, whatever his injury or whatever the severity is, he might miss the Carolina game. Because Juwan is seriously one of the best pass blocking tackles in the NFL, and he's tremendous. And we really, 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 really need him. All right, so next news story. Now, this isn't necessarily connected to the Dolphins, but this is interesting. And I know, we'll see what you guys think about this, but I think it's interesting, and I think it needs to be brought up here. Packers cut tight end Martellus Bennett. The Packers have cut tight end Martellus Bennett, a source tells Field Yates of ESPN.com. The move comes after days Bennett announced that he's considering retirement after the 2017 season. According to NFL's Transition Wire, the Packers dropped the tight end with a, quote, a failure to disclose physical condition designation. Interesting. Bennett, 30, joined the Packers on a 3-year, $21 million deal in spring. 3 years. The Packers may look to recoup some of that money. To date, the Packers have paid out about $8 million to the tight end. He was great with the Patriots in 2016, but he was unable to replicate that production in Green Bay. His Packers tenure ends after he hauled in just 24 receptions, 233 yards, and 0 touchdowns in 7 games. It's not immediately clear whether Bennett will look to continue his career or he'll get a head start on retirement. Quote, I think this is from Bennett. Yeah, quote, no, it's not from Bennett. Quote, after conversations with my, yeah, it is, this is a quote from Michael Bennett, Martellus Bennett. Quote, after conversations with my family, I'm pretty sure these next 8 games will be the conclusion of my NFL career, Bennett wrote on social media in late October. Quote, to everyone who has poured themselves and time into my life and my career, these next games are for you. Thank you, end quote. If Bennett does seek employment, he'll become the hottest property on the mid-season free agent market. Despite his struggles in 2017, he's just 1 year removed from hauling in 55 receptions for 701 yards and 7 touchdowns for the Pats. All right, this is interesting, and I think you guys know why it's interesting. Number one, Adam Gase coached him. They have a good relationship with each other. Adam knows he's been in this offense before. He knows how to use him. Martellus caught a ton of balls for him at the time. So this is going to be interesting. What the Dolphins want to do. I know some of you guys, I don't know if we have a ton of the cap space thing is an issue, but I don't know if he'll go for all that much now. Now I don't think Martellus would be interested in this. It doesn't sound like he is interested in extending his career. Especially going on to a new team, a new locker room for the last 8 games of the season. He might just shut it down and call it a day. But if he is interested, it is interesting. The Dolphins, Adam Gase loves his tight ends. He runs a lot of 2 tight end sets. Martellus is a really good run blocker. He could really help us out with Julius Thomas, even though Julius Thomas is starting to get on a hot streak here at the tail end of the season. It might be interesting to see if the Dolphins want to add another weapon to their offense for the final 8 games of the season. And Adam, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's done crazier things. I mean, the man called Jay Cutler out of retirement, so this isn't far-fetched. To say the least. All right, this next news story and final news story is more of speculation than anything. It's concerning quarterback Kirk Cousins and whether he'll be a Dolphin this year. Obviously, you guys know Garoppolo, 49er. So the connection between Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins, obviously Kyle Shanahan coached him in Washington for many years with his dad. So there was a very strong connection. Heavily rumored that he was going to be in San Francisco. That means there's going to be a franchise quarterback, if he doesn't stay in Washington, on the market. Now, will the Dolphins consider it? Is a very interesting thing. I would love to know what you guys think about it. It's going to be interesting what the Dolphins do at that position after the season, and I think Adam Gase is really going to evaluate what he thinks is best for the franchise moving forward. I would strongly I would think that Tannehill is going to be the quarterback in the 2018 season. I think that's probably what's going to happen, and I think most likely, if you're going to see a new quarterback on the Dolphins in 2018, it's going to be through the draft, and I think that's the best thing we can do as an organization. Find somebody Adam Gase likes, loves. He's, the reason he even got a coaching job in the league is his scouting ability. So I trust the man to find a really good quarterback, and there is a ton of really good prospects this upcoming season, and the talent pool is deep. With his scouting ability and his eye for quarterbacks and what he wants to fit in his system, I would strongly consider him going through the tape and finding and handpicking somebody that he thinks could either be the future of the franchise or a suitable backup for Tannehill for the next 10 to 15 years, or however long Tannehill wants to play. I'm still a big Tannehill guy. I think he's the franchise, and I think he was going to have a really, really good season in 2017. Unfortunately, didn't happen. All right, let's move on to the AFC East news you need to know about. All right, let's take a look at the standings. All right, so obviously the Patriots are at the top of the heap at 6-2. The Bills are at 5-3. We're at 4-4, third in the division, and the Jets are at 4-5 at last place. So the Jets are only one game behind us. They're 2 games behind the Bills. So the Jets are still very much in this. Obviously, getting a win against the Buffalo Bills was huge for them. Obviously, a division win anytime is huge. So they're still very much in this, 100%. You talk about the Bills. I really think it's going to come down to us and the Bills, depending on how they do on their last 8 games of the season. They got the Saints coming up. That's going to be a tough matchup for them. But, obviously, we don't play each other until the very end of the year. Like, literally the very end of the season. I think the last 3 games, we play each other twice out of the last 3. And our last game is against them. So it is super exciting. I can't wait for it. We're still very much in the playoff race. It's going to come down to that wild card position between probably the Jaguars, Titans. Those are probably our top 2 contenders, depending on who falls out of that division and if they can stay consistent. We'll see. But those are 2 of them. Obviously, the Ravens are still in the mix, but I think it's really going to come down. If we're deep into the mix, it's going to come down to us, the Bills, the Jaguars, or the Titans, again, depending on how that division shakes out. So, obviously, the last 2 games of the year, basically, the last 2 out of the 3 games of the year, those are huge, but I really think it is going to come down to us and the Bills for that wild card position. So those last 2 games are going to be huge. If one of us splits a game with New England, that's huge. That is huge, because the Bills have struggled to beat New England. If they get swept by the Patriots, that's huge. If we can get one at home, which I like us in that situation a lot, and I think that's the one thing we have over the Bills is we've had success against them at home. So that's going to be interesting and how it shakes out. But if we can split one with New England, that's a huge step in the right direction for us. And if we split it with the Bills, that's going to be interesting. Obviously, they split with the Jets as well. So this thing's going to come down to the wire. And again, whoever splits with New England is probably going to get that wild card position. Now, again, New England's not off scot-free. They're 6-2. This division's pretty close. But again, whoever wins against New England is probably going to take that wild card position. If we both somehow split with New England, it's going to be even more interesting. But obviously, the last 2 out of the 3 games are huge. If we both get swept by New England, that would obviously add 2 losses onto both of our records. That's 6 losses for us. That's 5 losses for them. So these next few games are huge if we want to get into the playoffs. I think you could probably make it at 9-7 this year. There's so many teams in contention that's so inconsistent. We talk about the Jaguars, how inconsistent they are. The Titans are pretty inconsistent this year. They still haven't found an identity. That offensive line is something. I don't know what's going on with them, but it's wide open. And again, whoever splits with New England and Baltimore, if you want to throw them in the mix, 2 AFC North teams getting out into the playoffs. They have Joe Flacco there. Harbaugh's a great head coach. They have some stability. They have a pedigree there. They have consistency in a way there, but their offense is too bad. It's not talented enough. Their defense is really going to have to carry them. And it's not like they're underperforming on the. They just don't have a lot of skill position talent there. They've had way too many injuries, so it's going to be tough for them. I really do think it's going to be us, the Bills, Titans, and Jags. It's either going to be 2 AFC teams come out or 2 AFC South teams come out, which is crazy to say because usually that's far from the truth. I don't think 2 AFC West teams are going to come out. When you talk about the Chargers, they're super inconsistent, although they have the talent, and they've sustained some significant injuries as well. You talk about the Raiders, they're still in it, but they're pretty inconsistent as well. Their defense is atrocious. Their front 7 is really good, but their back end is too bad. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know how many quarterback. I know they have to play the Chiefs still. They would still have to play Phillip. The Broncos shouldn't be too hard, but they've already lost to the Broncos. So that's going to be interesting how that shakes out. But depending on how many quarterback, I don't know the rest of their schedule. I know they play the Patriots in Mexico City. So depending on how many really good quarterbacks they play, is going to really dictate what the record is at the end of the season. Unless Derek Carr can pull a rabbit out of his hat and somehow carry his team to victories, and that front seven can rush the passer at a high level, because that back end is not good. So it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of teams in the mix. The AFC is crowded as it's crazy right now. It's crazy. You know, the NFC is nowhere near as competitive as the AFC is right now, in my opinion. I think the quality of teams in the AFC far surpass the quality of teams in the NFC. So it's going to be interesting. The three things you got to have to get into the playoffs in November and December. Number one, you got to be a good team on the road. Number two, you got to run the football. And number three, you got to play defense. Those are the three keys, man. And if we can somehow get 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 3, I like our chances. We have the great defense. We've been a really good road team so far this year. We'll see about the running game. I'm not completely sold on it yet, but we have the other two. And if we can consistently have those other two, then I think we can get in. And if the offense can just give us 24 points a game, I like our chances in most of those games. So I like it. I like how this team is. I have faith in Adam Gase, and not only that, but I have faith in the talent on the football field. I still think we're a very talented team. I think this trade, if it wasn't for this trade and all this drama going on constantly with our team, especially mid-season, and us constantly having to change our identity on offense because of the personnel, I think our team would look a whole lot differently. And if we could have figured this out earlier on, and I had another mid-season identity crisis, then our record would reflect better results than it has. Because when you talk about some of the games that we've been in, it's either been, one, we can't score, just can't move the football, or two, mental mistakes. And those have been our biggest losses thus far this season. So it's going to be interesting. It's close. Who knows? I still like I said, we have what it takes to do it. We have two out of the 3, in my opinion, things that you have to make it. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. Again, I'm very confident in this team. Unlike some people, I think we're going to be very competitive if we make it or not. All the games are going to be close. Our team is very good. I really trust it. As long as we don't turn the ball over at a high clip, then we'll be fine. I think that's the one Achilles heel we have, is can this team overcome turnovers? And really, can this team overcome mental mistakes? And they really haven't proved that they can. So as long as we don't shoot ourselves in the head, I like where we're at. I think we're a very, very, very good team, and I think we're a competitive team. From what I've seen so far this year, I think the offense is getting on a roll. I think they found their identity finally, which I think is Adam Gase and the way he calls plays. I think that's our identity. Now that the playbook is wide open, there's no compromises. I love this offense. I love this defense. It's outperformed every expectation anybody had. So I'm excited. All right, so let's move on to the players. Then we have to highlight on players highlighted on game day that, in my opinion, should need to have good games, or I think will have good games. But before we get into that, let's get into the rookie rankings. So, you know what? It's been a weird year for this rookie class because there's been so many really outstanding players that have made a tremendous impact on this team, that it's hard to rank them. Cordrea Tankersley, even though his play has been up and down these last few weeks, he's played some really good quarterbacks, a lot of gunslingers, a lot of people take a lot of shots downfield. So, some rookies failings there, but I still have him number 1. I think what he's done at really not the starting cornerback position, but really he's the one everybody's picking on, because not a lot of people are throwing at Xavier at a high clip, even though Xavier got called for a big pass interference penalty last night. He's been playing pretty well, fairly well. Cordrea's been the guy that everybody's been throwing at, and to be honest with you, he's done a pretty good job of holding up. I mean, for a rookie to be the guy that everybody picks on and to perform at that level, I think anybody in the NFL would take that kind of performance from a rookie corner. A lot of people in the NFL have rookie corners starting, and they're not having near as good of a year as Cordrea, in my opinion. I think he's the best rookie corner so far this year, in my opinion. All right, so number 2, I have, which is crazy because he's a third-round pick. Even thinking about pre-draft, I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but he has really surprised me, seriously. Number 2, I got Charles Harris. He needs to fix some things, obviously. Obviously his setting the edge is a problem, but when he's in obvious pass rush situations, he causes havoc for opposing offenses. I mean, it's consistent too. It's not like, oh, it's up and down. No. It's very consistent. He's made plays even though, some of the games that we've played. The Raiders game is the only exception to this defensive line not having a high productivity in terms of a pass rush. And that really, our secondary really had to do a great job in that game, and they did a fine job, But anyway, you talk about the Ravens game. Really, Charles Harris, the last 6 games, has shown up on the tape. When you look at, he's made impactful plays, he's made plays just in general. So Charles Harris is number 2 for me. I think he just causes havoc for opposing offenses when they're in third and long situations, or third and any situation, really. He just needs to clean up some things, setting the edge and being a better run defender. And that'll come with age and really getting acclimated to the NFL game. Hopefully we see that jump from year 1 to year 2, and I think we will. Charles Harris is a hard-working guy. I like him, and he's always going to be a great pass rusher. Number 3, and that's what you need in the playoff runs. So he's going to come in handy these next few games, especially since we can couple that with a really good run defense. Number 3 is this is hard. I still have him. Vincent missed last game, so I'll say Devon. What he's been able to do at the tackle position at his age, and what he's done at the tackle position this early on in his career, especially in a rookie. I mean, getting the start, winning the job. Well, not really. I mean, him and Jordan flip in and flip out, but to have significant playing time is what I mean. Is pretty crazy. Especially he's a 5th-round pick. We really thought he was going to be a prospect. We didn't hear great things in camp. And for him to come out and play like this is awesome. So that's my top 3. I got Cordrea, I got Cordrea, I got Charles, and then I got Devon. All right. So that's my rookie rankings. This highlight the players you need to know about on game day. So if you guys are new to the channel, you don't know the channel, you don't watch the stuff, if you somehow made it almost 30 minutes into this video, congratulations. I hope you're enjoying it so far. But if you don't know, I've said this many times. My brother is a huge Panthers fan. I've watched literally every Panthers game probably for a lot of years now. Okay, so I've watched every game this year, and some of the things that you see with this team is their defense. It's very similar to our team. Their defense carries their team. On offense, Cam Newton has to have a gajillion yards on the ground for them to have success. He has to be successful running the football himself because they really can't find a ground game. Their offensive line struggles without Ryan Khalil. It has all year. Their offensive line talent on the tackle positions is porous to say the least. Their guard positions are some of the best guard duos in the league when you talk about Norwell and Trey Turner, and they love to run behind those guys. But they've really struggled to solidify any type of consistent running game, and that's really hurt their offense because when they're at their best is when they're in the top 10 in the league in rushing the football. That's when that team is a Super Bowl contender, and right now they're not doing that, and they've really struggled with it. A lot of that has to do with the offensive line and the talent on it. A lot of it has to do with their starting center Khalil being hurt and being injured for the last 2 years now, really. So we can really take advantage of that. So that means we can, if we dominate the line of scrimmage on defense, we should have a really, really nice day. And pressure Cam, because when Cam gets pressured, he tries to do too much with the football, and then he throws it in coverage. He's not a bad reader of the field. It's just when he gets pressured, he tries to do too much. It's very similar to Jay Cutler. Like when they get in trouble, they kind of feel the pressure of the game, and they feel like they need to make a play here, and then they obviously commit a turnover. So where certain players can succeed is on this D-line, and I would look for the interior of this defensive line to have a really good game. So Devon Gottschall and Jordan Phillips are the guys I'm highlighting. Both of these guys need to have consistent play for us to have success in this game. On any play, really, because there's so many trick plays in the backfield. We can talk about speed options, triple options, shovel pitches. I mean, it's crazy. You have to be shovel screens inside, which I'm sure the Panthers and Mike Shula are going to really utilize because we've had trouble with our assignment on screen, so that's going to be heavily abused. They love end arounds. So the D tackles are really going to have to be smart on their assignments. Not only them, but the linebackers and the ends really have to understand what the Panthers are trying to do on offense, because they run a lot of gadget plays. So the DTs are going to really have to have a great game to disrupt some of those gadget plays, to get into the backfield, and to really disrupt plays. It's going to be tough for them. They're going, some of the guards that they have, Norwell and Trey, they're very good. But I think if we can get some push on the D-line, not just the DTs and the ends, but especially the DTs, I think we can have a lot of success. So Jordan and Sue, I expect Sue to have a great game. He always does. But Jordan and Devon need to do a really great job of not just playing well, but getting penetration into the backfield. As for offensively, some of the things the Panthers have struggled with in terms of their defense, because it's been tremendous all year, is if there's been some, even though the stats will say differently, there have been, inconsistencies in the run defense. Sometimes, for some reason, you saw, if you watch Panthers games, which I don't know if you do, but they played the Buccaneers, they played the Falcons. Really, all of their games this year, there have been big plays in the running game. So if we can take advantage of, if we do get a really good look in terms of a big hole opens up or something happens in the running game where we have a chance to make a big play, we really have to hit it and do, not make a mistake holding any face mask, legal use of the hands, none of that. We have to take advantage of that, because they do have some leaky holes sometimes when they rotate some of their D tackles, when K1's not in there, when, they put Vernon Butler in there, Star Latulippe. When they continually rotate, because that's what they love to do, that's what Ron loves to do, rotate their defensive linemen, you really see some inconsistent play due to the fact that there are just different personnel in there. So if we can take advantage of that in the running game, that's huge. That's huge, because if we can get good field position all day, pop some big runs in the running game, that's going to help the pass game out a ton. So the guys I'm highlighting on offense is Damian and Kenyon. When they get the opportunity, because I think they will in this game, to pop a big run, because when you talk about Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Shaq Thompson, those three guys patrolling the middle of the field and patrolling the run game, they're insane. They're insane. They're great. They're monsters. So we have to take advantage of the plays when they present themselves. And something that they love to do on defense that they haven't done, when Sean McDermott was there as their defensive coordinator, they blitz a ton. They blitz like almost every down. It's insane. So Adam Gase is a great schemer. And that sounds crazy and sounds a little funny. But he's a great schemer. He loves catching people in blitzes. If you're overloading one side with a ton of people, he loves throwing the screen right at that. Everybody flows up and rushes up, and then on the backside you got a screen and nobody's there to tackle anybody. So Adam Gase loves that. He loves that. He loves playing an aggressive defense. So again, I think the DTs are going to come up huge in this game. They have to have a good game. I think the running backs are going to come up tremendous. I mean, these guys need to have a really good game this game, in the receiving game and the running game, especially the receiving game, for this offense to get in the flow, especially in the passing game. I feel like this offensive line, Chris Collinsworth made a great point when in the Sunday Night Football game, when he said that this team is really built to pass block. When you look at what Laramie was good at coming out of Ole Miss, he was a tremendous pass blocker. The gripe that everybody had with him, and the reason the Ravens didn't draft him, wasn't because of the stupid weed video, it was because they really questioned his ability on the next level to be a consistent run blocker. And we really thought that him starting at guard would help him in that area. It really hasn't panned out in his second season, but he's a really good pass blocker. One of the more, he's had his ups and downs there as well. He's played kind of inconsistent in both areas of his game, but I think that's him trying to get acclimated back into his natural position. But I think his strength of his game is still being a pass blocker. You look at Juwan James, his entire career here, he's been a really, he's been an underrated run blocker. I'll say that. When he was at Tennessee, I didn't think he was a bad run blocker, but he's a super athletic guy. The best thing he's been doing since he's been here as a Dolphin is a pass blocker. Same thing with Jermon. Same thing with Mike. So I think we have to have a good flow in the pass game to have success. So they need to have a good game in the running game as well as the passing game. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm doing a ton of stuff, trying to get these questions pulled up so we can move on to the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. All right, so let's move on to the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A. This question comes from Gamerific. He says, I want JT Barrett to be on the team. He's a quarterback. You're right, Gamerific. Well, you're right about some things in this. Some of the things in this statement. One, what you're really right about is the Dolphins need to draft a quarterback for the 2018 in the 2018 draft. They need to, whether that's to groom somebody behind Tannehill to draft the future of the franchise, to pass the baton to later down the road, or you could, really cash some draft picks with him if Tannehill takes off, wins like 2 MVPs, two-time Super Bowl champion. You can use this guy to, cash some first-round picks in. The Patriots had Tom Brady. The Packers had Aaron Rodgers, but the Patriots still drafted Garoppolo. The Packers still drafted Brett Hundley. The Patriots still drafted Jacoby Brissett. So it doesn't matter who you have at quarterback. Drafting a quarterback that has a ton of talent and that you think can be a future starter in this league, just even a starter, not even a superstar or a star, a starter, can grant you a lot of things in this league, because quarterback is always going to be a position that somebody is looking for. So quarterback in this upcoming draft, not only because the talent is so loaded and the talent pool is so deep that you could find a franchise guy in the 3rd to 4th round. You really could, because there's a lot of playmakers in this draft. So you're making a solid point that the Dolphins do need to seriously look at a quarterback in the earlier rounds in the 2018 draft. When I say earlier, I'm talking the first 3 rounds. So is JT Barrett that guy? Is he the guy the Dolphins say, okay, this is the guy that we're going to either groom, or maybe, we'll have him compete with whoever in training camp? I love JT Barrett. I love him. Sometimes he shows me one thing and sometimes he shows me the other thing. The thing that I love about him is he shows great poise in the pocket. He has this calmness to him. He's a playmaker within the pocket. He can make plays with his legs. He's a great throw on the run guy. He's got great touch on the deep ball. I think he can develop into a really good pocket passer on the next level. He has the poise to do it. He has that Dak Prescott really feeling to him. And I know that sounds a little weird. I guess crazy. It's, high praise, but he has that I don't know. Just when I watch him, he just, he looks like a franchise quarterback to me. And again, when you look at a mobile quarterback that has a lot of success on the ground in college, you really want to look at, can they develop into a pocket passer on the next level? Because that is a necessity when drafting a quarterback. If they can never develop into a pocket passer, you're either going to get like a couple 2 to 4 great years like Vic had. You're not going to really have a consistent quarterback, or you're just going to get an absolute bust. So when I look at mobile quarterbacks that have success and most of their game is running the football and a lot of the offense is built around that, you really have to look at, 5 years down the line when he's in his 5th to 6th year, is he ever going to develop into a good pocket passer? And I think JT Barrett is capable of that, and that's something I really like about him. Again, he shows great poise. He keeps his eyes downfield. He never ducks his head. He never tries to do too much. But it's the inconsistencies with him. I love the JT Barrett that throws for 5 touchdowns, looks unstoppable. He's got a great feeling of the game. He knows when to run it. He knows when to keep it and throw it. He's got great touch of the football. And then there's the JT Barrett that plays Iowa, and throws 4 interceptions, something crazy. Like, I can't remember how many picks either, but he had a terrible game. And that's not the only game he's had games like that his entire career where he's looked great. Next game, not so much. So I have question marks about his consistency. There's not really one thing. I mean, when I say consistency, it's decision making and it's ball placement with him. He has to be more consistent in those 2 areas. When I say consistency, it's not just like his play is erratic. Those 2 things really need to tighten up on the next level, because obviously the windows get narrower. But that's something you saw with Dak Prescott too. I really didn't think Dak was going to be near as good as he is now. I don't think anybody really did, because such a big part of his game in college was running the football, and I never really thought he would ever translate into a pocket passer, but he did. So maybe the same thing can happen to JT Barrett. Dak had his inconsistent games. Trust me, when he played Alabama, he did not look like a future NFL star. But I think JT can be that. It's just his inconsistencies, man. That's what really makes me wonder about him. If I was a GM and he was on the board, I'm like, I like what I've seen from him on 10 out of the 8 games that he's played or something like that. It's just he's got too many inconsistencies in his game. Hopefully he can clean those things up, and I think there's a strong chance that he can, because he has the potential to be a really good quarterback. And again, I really, really like JT Barrett. When he's on fire, he looks amazing, but when he's not, it looks really bad. So I like him a lot. I think he's an interesting prospect. He might be somebody that we draft to sit behind Tannehill for a while, and I think Adam Gase could really concoct some really good packages with him as well. Even if he doesn't start, we could throw him in there and run some gadget plays. Gamerific says, did you see, and again, I like JT a lot. The gamer12345 says, "What did you think of what do you think of this 3-round mock draft? First round, that offensive guard from Notre Dame. Second round, Baker Mayfield. Third round, James Butler from Iowa. I like it. I think Notre Dame is going to produce some really good linemen this upcoming draft. They come from a pro style offense. They run some spread, but they run some pro style. Obviously, some pro styles concepts as well. So he's a grinder. Obviously their entire offense is built off the running game, so that translates well into our offense. So I love the Notre Dame guy, whose name is escaping me. I think you've messed with my brain up there, gamer, because I can't think of his name right now. Second round, Baker Mayfield. A lot of people compare him. This is a weird comparison, but I've seen a lot of people compare him to Tony Romo. I have no idea why, but he's not as big as Tony was. Tony was like 6'2", 6'1", maybe something like that. Baker's like 5'11", 6 foot maybe. So the size is that's a big difference. But what I like about Baker Mayfield is he has the potential. We've seen Drew Brees work in the NFL. We've seen Russell Wilson work in the NFL. Doug Flutie, he had some great years in the NFL. There have been some smaller guys in the NFL that translate to the NFL, and their game translates with him. Baker Mayfield is one of those guys that, can he do it? Can his game translate to the next level? He's got tremendous touch on the football. He's a prolific pocket passer. He moves well in the pocket. I really like the way he moves. He's a playmaker within it. He navigates it well. He's got great pocket presence. He's got great feel for the game. But I really don't know if his size translates to the next level. His ball placement sometimes can be a little off. He can hurry throws at times. But I really like Baker Mayfield. And when I say hurry throws, I'm not trying to sound like some high-level scout or whatever, but what I mean by hurry throws is like, I hate quarterbacks that snap the ball and just throw it, especially like on fourth down when you need it. Hold on to the ball a little while. Use your athleticism. Make something happen, like Aaron Rodgers. That's what I mean by hurrying the ball up. Sometimes I see that from him, and I don't like that. Like, you're a playmaker. Use your athleticism. Run around a little bit. Create. Be a little bit more spontaneous. And sometimes he does that. So there's some things I really like about Baker Mayfield, but he's got big question marks. Hurries the ball too much sometimes. His ball placement can be inconsistent at times. Sometimes he throws behind his receivers, is what I mean by that. And then does his size translate to the next level is a very big question mark for me. So interesting. He's an interesting prospect. Running back James Butler from Iowa. The thing I like about him is he's got really good vision. And for a smaller back, for him to be successful within that offense is pretty cool. Like, you really don't see that a lot. Like, when you look at, like, Reggie Bush when he was coming out of USC, that was really a college-style offense. We're going to throw it around the yard, spread him out. For a smaller back to be in that Iowa system and have that much success it's not something you see every day. And he could catch a pass and take it all the way. He's a very good receiving back, and he's a home run hitter. So I like him too as well. He's, like I said, he's got really good vision, and he's quick. He can make great cuts. So I like him. He's a great value in the third round. For sure. And we've seen third round running backs go crazy on the next level. We saw Kareem Hunt do that this year. That was a great question in the gamer. This question comes from the gamer 12345. He says, "Can the Dolphins somehow still go 10-6?" Yeah, it depends on how things shake out. If we don't turn the football over, if we keep it close to the vest, I think our offense is explosive, and I think we've seen that over the last few games or some games of the season, but we haven't seen it on a consistent basis. If they can somehow be more consistent, really, really embrace this new offense in the way it's ran, and it's a way more traditional Adam Gase offense, and I think that's going to be on an identity, as I've said many times. If that can work for us, I think we're going to have a lot of success, and I think we can still make a run, definitely make the playoffs, but 10-6 is definitely a possibility. Our defense is really good, and like I said, you have to have a good defense, you have to be good on the road, and you have to have a run game to make the playoffs in November and December. The Gamer12345 says, "If we were to draft a running back in the later rounds of the draft next year, who would you want?" A running back. Dang. Man. The later rounds. That's tough, dude. The later rounds. There's a lot of running backs that I like that you could probably get in the second or third, but that's not really later. That's really early on. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe you guys have some suggestions down in the comment section below. But there's a lot of guys that I like earlier on, a lot, that I think could be franchise running backs. But that's a great question. I really don't have a definitive answer for you. The Gamer12345 says, should the Dolphins reconstruct both Sue and Branch's contract? That's a great question. You know, I thought we could have probably gotten Andre for cheaper, but I think, again, the culture that Adam Gase is building here, if you perform well within the building and he likes what you do, then he's going to he's going to reward you with a contract like he did with Kenny, like he did with Andre. And that kind of contradicts what Armando was saying earlier on, is we give up on talent too early. If you perform well in this culture and what Adam Gase breeds, then you're going to get paid. So that kind of contradicts that. If you perform, Jay was not performing well throughout the 2017 season. He thought this change would help the offense. So far it has. We'll see if that continues. But your question is, should we reconstruct Sue's? And definitely Sue's. Branches, when we signed him to that deal, it was more than I think the Giants were going to pay, or more than we were going to pay. We didn't want to pay OV that much money that we paid Andre, if I'm not mistaken. So that was weird. Obviously, that was before Adam Gase, so it's not his fault. And I don't think Mike Tannenbaum, Mike was here, I think. So that was weird. I didn't like that. I was like, that's stupid. But Andre he had a really good season. I didn't know if he could follow that up with another really good one, but he did. So Andre doesn't necessarily have to be reconstructed, but Sue's definitely. I want that. I think we can. There's some wiggle room there, and he sounds like he's willing to deal there. The Gamer12345 says, is there a big time offensive guard in free agency that we should go after? I'm trying to think, because the draft, the 2014 draft class, most of the rookies are going to be free agents, if I'm not mistaken, because that's Jarvis's class. I'm trying to think of all the offensive player alignment that came out in 2014 that haven't already been extended. I'd have to look that up. Maybe some of you guys can make a list of that in the podcast below. That'd be pretty cool. The Gamer12345 says, if we ended up with a top 10 pick, what would be your thought on drafting Saquon Barkley? If we ended up with, I would love that. I love Saquon Barkley. I think, seriously, I really, really like him. I think he's going to be, if not an MVP one day, definitely an Offensive Player of the Year winner at some point in his career. He's that explosive, and he's that talented. So I like Saquon Barkley a lot. I think he's very similar to Zeke in terms of the fact that you can draft this guy, he's going to come in, and he can really help your offense. And I think if you're a team that's struggling and you're trying to rebuild your franchise, you can draft Saquon in the first, because he's going to go in the first, and you can get a quarterback in the second or third round that could potentially be your franchise for the rest of to the next 10 to 15 years. Very similar to what the Raiders did with Mac and Derek. This next question, this is more of a comment than a question, comes from Gamerific. He says, Drake was great, you're right. I really want him to get more snaps, but you don't want to tip your hat too much to the offense. This question comes from Brandon. He says, I low-key feel an offensive purge coming this offseason. How do you feel about that idea? It's definitely going to happen, Brandon. If this offense continues to be inconsistent, if they continue to struggle, if they continue to look as bad as they did in some of these games this year, then yes. Mike Tannenbaum has said it. It's been reported multiple times this season. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be very similar to what Chris Greer and Mike did to the defense, and they had a lot of success with that. And this upcoming draft, you can find a lot of offensive playmakers in this upcoming draft. But if it doesn't, I wouldn't. If things continue to improve, I think some changes are still going to be made. But I think if things continue to improve and we make the playoffs, I don't think you're going to see as drastic of moves. I think Juice is definitely going to be a lock if that happens. If we have success down the rest of the year, I don't think you're going to see drastic changes. The Republic Fin says, what do you think of Lamar Jackson as our future quarterback? He has great chemistry with Devontae Parker. Think he'd be solid backing up Ryan for 2 to 3 seasons. Thoughts? Please answer this. This is a great question because you put it in. He could be backing up Ryan for 2 to 3 seasons. I've got a ton of questions about Lamar Jackson. I love Lamar Jackson. I think he's a tremendous playmaker. He's got a tremendous feel for the game. You talk about football instincts and what he can do in the open field. Nothing like even in a running back. I've rarely seen that kind of ability. So I love him in terms of his ability on the field. I have 2 question marks. His frame, he's really skinny. So can he be a consistent starter in this league. What I mean by that, can he stay healthy for like a 16-game season? That's a huge question mark. I don't want him to be RG3'd and, have injuries really ruin his career. 2, can he be a pocket passer, very similar to RG3? If you do sustain those injuries and you're a little bit more hobbled, a little bit more grounded, 6 to 5 years in your career, you're going to need to become a pocket passer. If you want to be a consistent Super Bowl winner, or if you want to be a Super Bowl winner in general, consistently, you have to be a competent pocket passer. So that's a question mark I have from him. You really can't have a franchise quarterback that isn't a good pocket passer. So will he ever develop into that? Because some of the things you've seen thus far this year, they've really tried to help him in that area. And I think that's due to the fact that they're trying to help his draft stock a little bit. They're trying to teach him you can look downfield, and that's kind of hampering his take off and run ability. I think his stats in terms of his Heisman run or whatever consecutive Heisman would be a little bit better because he's not as hesitant to run the football. He's trying to become that. And so far this season, you've seen some improvements in that area, but it also hurts his ability to just feel out the game. Brandon says, we play Cam Newton, who is a mobile quarterback. Last season, we sucked at covering running QBs such as Tyrod Collin, and so can we contain him? It's very hard to contain Cam because, what you said right there is athletic guys like Tyrod and Collin. Cam is not just an athletic quarterback. He's a 6'5" death machine. This man is so hard to tackle. It's insane. He trucks people, for God's sakes. Cam Newton is a truck, okay? So it's not just he's like Big Ben. It's not just getting to him and containing him and filling your gaps and making sure your assignments are sound and containing him and making sure he stays within the pocket. It's about if you get your hands on him, bring him down, because you have to really capitalize on the opportunities when they present themselves, because he's such a big dude. Will we struggle covering him? I think we're more athletic along the front because of Charles and Will than we were the last year when you talk about people like Jason Jones and Donald Butler at linebacker. Some of those things are fixed. So I think we're definitely a faster defense than we were a year ago. Brandon says you asked us what you could do to make the page better. How about a fan opinion podcast, something similar to the fan Q&A, but opinions such as I think we should trade Nate Allen, and could share your opinion on it. I don't necessarily understand. I'll read this after the podcast. We have to keep going. I'm running out of time, but I don't necessarily understand it. I will respond to you, Brandon, though. So I definitely will read more into that. Brandon says let's see here. He says, Brandon says, we get TJ back this week, thank God. What kind of changes do you think will bring to the defense? I think I think it allows us to have more stability at the safety spot, if that makes any sense. And I think it can help with communication issues and breakdowns in the secondary, because we're not overcompensating for injuries at that position. And when Nate Allen was in there, we really didn't have as many busted coverages when they really started getting familiar with each other. He really played free safety the entire game. Rashad and him rarely rotated. So I think now that TJ is going to be thrown into the mix, I think that's not going to happen anymore. Like that catch to Seth Roberts on Sunday Night Football, that's not going to happen when TJ's in there. Brandon says, do you have connections with the Dolphins? If so, can you tell them to sign Terrell Revis? Even if I did, they probably wouldn't listen to me. Brandon says, Jarvis is low-key like our touchdown machine. What do you think we could do to get him more receiving yards? That's something to see. This is this crazy fan thing. Everybody's complaining, he doesn't get into the end zone enough. And Adam has done a great job of getting him involved more in the red zone. And Jarvis is absolutely taking advantage of that. I think he's on a touchdown streak right now. He's had a touchdown in each of, I don't know how many games he's played in. He should literally have a touchdown in every game he's played in this season if it wasn't for missed throws or poor execution. So Jarvis has really cleaned up one of the weaker areas in his game, and you have to give a hats off to Adam Gase as well. So, all right. This next question comes from David. He says, do you think that Adam Gase is stable enough coach to last with Miami. After this J.J. deal, I'm beginning to see Joe Philbin all over again. I get he's very good. Well, I don't know. Is he good, or was Vance Joseph really good? And what if we keep losing? Does he trade everyone? Listen, I'm not even joking around when I say this man. When you talk about what we did last year, you have to. Listen, Vance was great, but statistically, his defense was the worst in football. What Adam Gase did to completely scrap everything in the middle of the season on offense, because the defense really never got any better, especially at the tail end of the year. They were giving up 30 points. I mean, you talk about the Cardinals almost came back in that game because our defense couldn't finish. So the defense really never improved, but the offense, you couldn't argue that it didn't improve, especially the last 2 months of the season. Hopefully that happens again. But they were a completely different football team, and that's all on Adam Gase. That's all on Adam Gase. That was just a tremendous coaching job by him. Same thing with this year. Statistically, this is the worst offense in franchise history. Statistically, this offense is worse than the Cleveland Browns offense and the New York Giants offense. They haven't won in the 49ers game. And the 49ers offense. The 49ers and Browns have not won a game this year. The Giants have won one. Who do you think is the purpose? Seriously. That is insane. That is insane. Not only is Adam Gase a great coach, he just puts people in the right positions to make plays. Not only does he do that, but he has a very strong hand in this roster in terms of he really has a big input, just as much as Chris Greer and Mike Tannenbaum. If he wants something done, they get it done for him. So the roster that you see right now, obviously, even the J.J. trade, is very much an Adam Gase roster. And the fact that somehow we're 4-4 right now speaks volumes. Not only that, but Joe Philbin had a terrible culture, never really lost the locker room 2 years in. This man was not liked. He never fit, like Bill Lazor, he just never fixed anything. You know, Bill Lazor was an issue in the locker room. He never fixed that until it was too late. That really ruined that. Like, he's made a lot of mistakes. He made a lot of mistakes in his coaching career. Adam has done nothing but great things so far in his coaching career. If we get rid of Adam, let's say we go 7-9 or something crazy like that, and we get rid of Adam, that's a mistake, because I think what he's building here is special. The culture here, you know, the team he's building, the people he's brought into this building. You think about the draft he just had; it was tremendous. So you got to give hats not just to Adam, but the front office as well. But like I said, he's got strong input on who he's put on this roster. I have a ton of faith in Adam, and I think what he's building here is going to be very special for a long time, especially after this upcoming draft. This question comes from BU6King24. He says, "Do you think the offense performs was better than expected and maybe might get us in the playoffs?" Yeah, I think if this offense can find an identity, which I think hopefully they did on Sunday night, and have that each and every single game, I think that's going to help them a lot, and I think we're going to see more productivity because of that, and they're going to produce due to that. D-Max says, "What do you think about the play from the running backs, and who do you think will get the bulk of the responsibilities?" I hope Kenyon, because I think he's the more talented out of the two. But either way, the way Damian performed was tremendous. David says, "You play to win. Why in God's name is the play calling so conservative by Gase? You have to go deep at least once in for the first quarter to let the opposing team know that they best pay attention." You know, that's the one thing that I think was not lacking in that game, but I felt like was lost in the second half, because the quick passing game was working. There was no reason to stop it. I mean, if they can't stop it, then why should we? But I think there are definitely going to be some deep balls dialed up if there weren't so many penalties in that second half. A lot of plays were lost, and his play calling was altered due to the fact that we were constantly in please don't turn over the football situations when you're in 2nd and 20s and crazy down the distances like that. So your play calling is obviously going to be altered. I think some of those plays were lost, and it really sucks when we're not getting enough offensive snaps, especially in that second half, because most of our drives were ruined because of stupid penalties. This question comes from J. Cray. He says, "What do you think we will look like now that TJ McDonald will be playing next week?" I said it earlier. I think you'll see more stability at the safety position. This question comes from George. He says, "I was at the game, and I have to say I loved what I saw from Drake. He ripped the longest rushing play of the season aside from the fumble. He looks like our back that can run and catch. Do you think the second half of the season is where our offense finally shines? Yes. Like I said, I think this is the identity, is the Adam Gase way, and I think if we follow that formula for the rest of the year, I think we're going to see numbers because of that. I think we're going to see our offense finally produce at the level that they're capable of. All right, guys, that has been the podcast for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know I didn't get a fan Q&A out this week, which is the first and since I started the show, and it really sucks that I couldn't get that out to you guys because the streak was insane, and I love doing that show. But I know I didn't answer everybody's questions, but we're out of time. There's a lot to go through this particular podcast, a lot to get through. So that is going to be it, guys. I hope I see you guys in the next one, and can't wait to watch the rest of these games. And I will see you guys in the next one.